All right, big hey now there to everybody out there. We're going to talk about Redemption Day. Today is a Friday for you. Might be a Thursday for me, but we're going to talk about it. We'll get to the chat a little bit later, but I think Hex Kinga, this is what my observation is as well. Watching those charts, not only Bitcoin bottom, but Ethereum, which might be even more important to us. So yeah. I mean, I think Richard Hart getting things set up. Maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. It's crypto, but it looks like we're ready. And still, you don't see people rushing in to get HEX, that's for sure. I mean, we see some, but I think people are going to be a little sorry. I mean, I'm already sorry I didn't get more at 1.2 million HEX at 1K, and not to mention the fact you get double that or more, depending when you're doing Johnny Chaos style, if you're going after the EX. All right, so this is a topic that was requested from people who are participating in the Actuator Finance chat. And, as you know, I'm talking about this all the time and digging into it. So this is a really good one to go after because this is going to talk about Redemption Day. In fact, we ought to make a movie. I see the founder, one of the founders of Actuator in the chat there. And now I have a dog barking too. But we should make a movie, Redemption Day, right? Didn't they just have Disclosure Day? That was about aliens, but this is about real life HEX. So we're going to dig into this and talk about the redemption because this is a new topic overall, right? For all of us, we haven't had HTTs before 2024. And now that we have them, just trying to understand, okay, so what are we doing? What is redemption all about? And so I thought a good one to go after would be to look at the 2460. For those of you who have been watching recently, my streams, we have this whole development on what we call the front end, or at least what I'm calling the front end of the curve, where a whole bunch of HTTs have been created and have been funded with liquidity, creating a straw man of sorts of all the different HTTs that are out there, but it's beginning to form. It's really odd to watch because it's forming a curve that actually makes sense. Yeah, there's mispricings, and some of them are higher, some of them are lower, but it's making sense. Right. So real high level, and I'll show you some of that. Today is going to be HEX Day 2440 here pretty quick. That'll be happening soon. Another hour will be at 2440. We're currently 2439. We have a redemption day coming up, which is 2460. All that means is that somebody minted HTT 2460s. Primarily, looks to me like they primarily did it to an end day of 2460. So this simulates doing 30-day stakes, right? So it's a simulation, but it's convenient for us to use it because it's coming up soon, and because it's coming up soon, we're gonna actually be able to watch what's happening in terms of redemption, what happens on redemption day. And so that should be pretty good, right? So what do we all need to know? Well, I guess if you don't care, you don't need to know. But if you're listening to this already, you probably care enough to know. I think for HEX users, it's important to kind of understand that this whole secondary market exists. You do not have to participate. Obviously, it's DeFi. It's crypto. You do what you want to do. Do your own research. But I do think I think it's important for all HEX users to understand it, because you could be missing some opportunities, and you also want to know what might affect overall HEX utility and HEX prices and all the rest. Okay. So that being said, there's a variety of types of people. We're going to talk about holders. We're going to talk about issuers. Holders would be people that have HTTs. Issuers, people who actually create stakes that are HSI stakes, and then turn around and make HTTs with them through minting, right? We're going to have providers, and then we have arbitrators, and then the community itself, and the idea that it can actually end stakes for everybody in the community, and then the actuator holders, people who are putting actuator in the vaults to earn. So with that, let's go just take a quick perusal, high level, just to show some things. So I'm going to go look at the Actuator platform before we go into a presentation. And so we're looking at the Actuator portal right here, the main site. And this is where you can come in and look at information about HTTs. And you get these great hint cards about things to look at, like best total return right now. Shows the Quattro 7s at 179% fixed return in HEX. Best premium 6,000s always seem to be up there. They have a good amount of liquidity. It's hard to draw that down. People will have to mint a ton of HTT 6,000s, you know, to make a significant dent in that. But so it keeps popping up as being what they call best for selling. And then best APR, which is basically best for buying, is that it remains at HTT 3000. And I do have this set to the featured HTTs because those are the ones with the greatest liquidity. But as I've shown in previous streams, you can come in here and change your filters, right? And really focus. And this is going to become really necessary later. It's already necessary for me, but later on, I mean, we've got 40 different HTTs floating around now, and all doing different things, different people setting them up, but they all act the same way, right? And but the market changes and pops around. So if we go look at what I call the front end of the market, we can see we have all these different HTTs starting from the 3,000, going down 30 days. All the way down to 2460. And as I've mentioned a couple times, I live on the other end of the curve. So this is something I'm kind of like getting my head around. Like, why would I be interested? Why are people interested? And I think the simple answer, and we've seen some people doing it during the last week. The simple answer is this liquidity is being put up as a service. It's being put up as a service. That's the best way I can describe it. Liquidity as a service. There's very limited risk to the person who does the liquidity. Yes, there could be other things they could be doing with the money, but that's not what I'm talking about. Opportunity costs. I'm talking about risk to their HEX bag. There's very little risk. But what it does is it provides opportunity for other people who want to pick time preferences that are 30, 60, 90, 180 days out, 210 days out, to stake, earn on their stakes, and at the same time, then be able to have some access to liquidity. And they can take that liquidity and go do things with it. And I saw, you can see some of these have a little bit of volume on them. I mean, some of these are low, you know, obviously low LP. But we see $100 worth of volume on the 2970s as an example, 2820s, 69 today, 26 bucks on the 2730, 88 bucks on the 2610. Now, I didn't go through all of them, go look, but basically what I've been seeing people do is stake out to, like, say, day 2610. They get near 1-to-1 HEX, and then they're throwing the HEX that they get when they swap out for it all the way up into a 3,000, which is a severe discount. I've been seeing some different plays like that. I've also seen some people just simply amplify, go back to HEX. I've seen some people coming in with EHEX, playing with it, doing swaps from EHEX into the system. But basically we are these HTTs that run every 30 days all the way down to 2460. And that's why we're going to focus on the 2460, because it's only about 20 days until that's redeemable. And currently the price on it is 0.99 HEX. Right? So it can't get much closer to one to one, right? So it's already sitting at 1-to-1, and it makes it a good opportunity to talk about this. It's got about $6,000 worth of liquidity in this pair. There are other pairs, but in the HEX pair. All right, so we've got this set up. We have these HTTs, and so there's two things that are going on here. One, somebody's providing the liquidity as a service, and they earn fees based on that, and more, presumably more HEX. That's the idea. And if nobody uses the liquidity, then they don't earn anything, right? If there are no arb trades, they don't earn anything. But if somebody does, then they earn fees. Now, on the other hand, the people would say, well, why would anybody mint to these and do it? Now, I'm not telling you there's a whole bunch of people going to mint 20 days out right now. All right. But this just exists as part of this chain of HTTs that are there. But why would they mint? Well, there's $5,000 worth of liquidity. They can stake and earn more HEX over the next 20 days. and get near 1-to-1, depending on sizing and all that, nearly 1-to-1 of their HEX, and go do something else for 20 days too. So they earn on the stake and they can go do something else. And then they can reverse the process. So if they think something big is going to happen, they can go do something with that HEX by swapping out. All right, that's my little spiel. So now I'm going to try to put it. I use my own words, so you know. I'm going to use our little presentation here for this next part of it. So we have this, what I call the, and again, you have a pricing. That's, you know, the market decides on the price. And so, you know, the cheapest ones are these 7900s and the 777s. And the reason they're that cheap is because they have low LP and people moved out of this to go do other things. And so the liquidity providers providing liquidity up here, and people are able to swap in and out of those, right? But they also, that results, their cheaper price results in a much higher fixed ROI, meaning the amount of HEX that you get. You know, if you're swapping one HEX in now, you get almost 3 HTTs, and so that's almost a 200% ROI. So it's pretty cool, you know, for that part of it. Now, a lot of people might look at this, at least I did at first. I'm like, well, you know, we're talking about $10, $5 or whatever. But you really have to look at these numbers and think, what does this look like at 50x? What does this look like at 100x? It's only 42x, I think, to all-time highs. You know, oh, no. It's only 42x to 10 cents. Forget that. And so what does this look like if we get 40x on a $1,000 pool? Well, these become $40,000 pools, right? You know, the 7,000s become, I think, almost an $8 million pool. All right. So this is all about building infrastructure and having the infrastructure in place before the big runs start to occur in the future, right? That's what this is all about. And what people are able to do, again, is they can pick a time frame, get access to some of the liquidity, and go do something different, and then come back. But people make mistakes sometimes. So yeah, clearly somebody can dwindle any of the bags and get chopped up. So you do need to be careful with whatever you do in crypto and monitor your actions. But this is like Johnny says, it's a huge expansion kit for HEX, and the thing that you can come in here and actually do this, right? It's a huge thing, and I think that in the future, there, you know, one of the possible futures, not a guarantee, but is that people are actually going to come in here and trade this like a bond market, But with that, let's get to some slides I prepared so we can kind of like show this from the beginning and kind of walk through what's happening here. I'm pretty excited about it overall. I mean, I am. I mean, obviously I'm doing all these streams. Yeah, somebody let me know if my mic is cutting out. Might just be my gravelly voice today, Randy. So yeah, let me check my my microphone real quick. All right, give me a heads up if you cannot hear me as we go further, okay? Because I do want to hit this. I'll just have to stream again if that happens. But I did just switch up my settings. Okay. All right, let's go look at this and see what we got going on here. All right, so turn this guy off, add this one on, and boom. All right, my friends. So somebody verify for me. You can see these slides. I think you can. I can see them too. And we're just going to kind of walk through this and talk about what we're seeing on the screen. All right. So first thing up, we're going to talk about the life cycle really quick. So basically what we're talking about when we talk about the life cycle of an HTT is that it all starts with HEX. You got to stake HEX first. You mint an HTT, and then you may trade it and do something with that HTT. All right, so we have market trading that's going on. Then you have liquidity provisioning. redemption, which is we're going to talk about, capital recycling, which could happen as well, right? Not always, it's not always the case, right? But you can also recycle, and basically that means moving that liquidity to the next rung. And so in today's walkthrough, we're going to talk about the 2460 HTT and it going all the way through its process. All right, so that's what we're going to be talking about. Let's see, I'm trying to look at this too. Somebody's saying it's YouTube. It might be YouTube. Might also be me. I probably should go for some voice lessons. All right. So let's walk through this. So you go all the way from the liquidity provisioning to redeeming, or you can even sell it, and some people may retire it and then recycle the capital. And what that looks like is possibly going from the earlier number 2460 and possibly going up the chain to 2490. It can go further, 2520. You can go all the way to 3000, but you can spread that liquidity. And there might be some strategies behind that for yourself, depending on how you want to do your business. All right, and so that'll happen. So let's get to the next slide on this. All right, so looking at the redemption day ecosystem, right, and what we're talking about. These are the types of participants that really are in this system. You've got what we call HTT holders. That might be somebody who just got interested and decided to get HTTs. So what are they going to do when the redemption day comes? Well, they can turn those in or sell them in the market for the best price. By turning them in, what I mean is the HTTs are backed one-to-one with HEX within the contract. We'll get to the ending at stakes a little bit later, but it's in the contract. And so you're going to get one-to-one with HEX. Or if for some reason there was some sort of like weird situation where they're really overpriced on the market, you could swap them out and get HEX that way. You have original issuers, the people actually created the day 2460 HTTs, and they've collateralized their HEX, and it's within the contract. And what ends up happening is when that stake ends, you have an opportunity to retire them if you'd like to. So if you have extra HTTs, you can retire them and get one-to-one HEX, but you don't have to. Not in that situation. You could also just hold the HTTs and redeem them one-to-one HEX, right? So you have those original issuers. You have liquidity providers. Well, and this is another thing to be thinking about for those who are LP providing. You can leave the liquidity in the pool. HTTs don't go away at redemption. They're still there. You can leave the liquidity in. You can remove the liquidity and redeem and go all to HEX, and you can roll to the next level, right? Go up. In the meantime, you have arbiters out there, or those arbitrage traders, right? Where if for some reason there was mispricing on the HTTs, low or high, they may decide to swap through, right? So you have those guys. We have what we call community end stakers. There's a panel on the Actuator protocol where you can go in, and once you hit redemption day, anybody in the community, actually, you have to be part of the community. Anybody can end a stake that's in the community listing, right? Meaning if you pass redemption day, after about 3 days, they offer a bounty for the community to end the stakes, right? And so if the original original staker doesn't act, you end up getting incentivized to motivate the community to end the stake and unlock the collateral. Right, so that's out there, and then finally, we have the actuator holders. So when the actuator holders put actuator in the vault, they begin to earn a portion of the fees from minting of the 2460s in this example. And they were distributed to the vault. There are no additional fees generated, but you have to keep in mind that 2460s, any of these HTTs, they can be minted up to 2 years after the redemption date. Now, is that plausible? Will somebody do that? I don't know if they will do that, but what I'm saying is the market doesn't go away, right? So the market doesn't go away. More HTTs can be minted after redemption day. And somebody will say, well, how is that possible? Well, there might be people with late HSIs, for instance, and they could actually go mint from them before they actually end their stake. Maybe they want somebody to end it for them. I don't know. There are some edge case strategies, right? But for actuator holders, you're basically in that vault. You make a decision if you want to pull your actuator out of the vault because you're not thinking there's going to be a lot of minting, and then you can rotate that into something else, right? But nothing's affected by this, right? So you have that process that you go through. All right, so that's our redemption day ecosystem. I think it makes sense from what I'm reading and what we put together. All right, so next. So the goal here, and my goal originally when I was thinking about it, and I'm guessing some other people might feel the same way, I was thinking all about retiring 100%. And if I didn't retire, redeeming immediately. But there is no hurry. I mean, you might want to watch what's going on and make sure you're going to get the value you expect to get out of it. But there isn't a hurry to get it done, like right that minute. All right. So before the end stake happens, right, you have HTT 2460s that are outstanding. The HEX is still locked from those stakes. All right. So they're out there. If the stake doesn't end, you can have late end penalties for ending late. And redemption does depend on that, but that's why they have the community feature there. So I think in general, it behooves the community to actually keep those clean and end the stakes. Now, stakes don't start accumulating penalties until it's about 2 weeks after the end date, but it would make sense to do that. But the 2460s before the end, they're still sitting there in the stake. Once the end stake unlocks the collateral, the HEX is put into escrow. I guess that's the right word for it, but it's reserved by Actuator. It's in the contract and it's held. And so first come, first served basis, people who are HTT holders can now redeem one-to-one at HEX. And I've shown that on stream a couple times, but you can do that right on the token screen, and you go to the HTT that you want and just hit redeem. Right, so you can redeem right from there. And after a stake is ended, there's no additional late penalties, etc. Right? Yeah. And so off you go. All right. So if you have a 2460, you can, if you're not going to swap out of it and you're not going to retire, you can simply redeem it. Right? But the protocol isn't designed to force everyone to do anything. Right? You do what you want to do. People can end their stakes or not end their stakes. The community can end them for you if you don't. And there is no need to immediately redeem them because the contract, here's a secret, the contract holds that HEX forever, until it's redeemed. And so you can see these HTT markets actually persist for years. And you say to me, Crispy, what are you talking about? Well, there's only a certain number of 2460 HSIs. If they all end on time and all of the HEX is put into escrow or into the contract and reserved in the contract to be paid out, then all HTTs that have ever been minted can always be redeemed one-to-one for HEX. And so these markets can continue to run for years, if not forever, right? Until the very last HTT is redeemed and all the pools are taken down and removed. And some of that stuff you can't even get to because some of the pools have a reserved amount, like in PulseX, where there'll always be a little tiny amount that's out there. Right. So the goal isn't to run like hell to get redeemed or retire. You do what you need to do for you. And I think the objective here is to unlock the collateral in some sort of a timely fashion so that liquidity is available for whatever's going to happen next with your strategy. Right. That's what's going on there. Next up. All right. So let's talk about the holder decision tree. So if you have those HTTs in your wallet assigned to your address or whatever, as I said, you could redeem for HEX. You get one-to-one HEX, assuming the HTTs are there. already because people have ended the stakes. You have immediate settlement. It's available right there. There's no market risk. You can sell on market. Nobody will stop you. DEXs are DEXs. You can do that. But, you know, I don't think that makes sense if it's less than one, right? Because you'll get more just by turning it back in. If you hadn't already retired the HTTs that you minted, redemption makes the most sense because it's 1-to-1. But there are potential edge cases, and maybe somebody for fun, we got a lot of jokers running around here. If somebody for fun drives the price of an HTT to 2-to-1 in HEX, well, maybe it makes sense to sell it on the market, right? That could happen, right? In fact, if somebody did that, maybe somebody else would mint them, even though they would be doing doing a mint that is for a later date. They could still mint them and sell on the market. If there was enough value, they might do it. But this is kind of an edge case. But you could also, so you have redemption. You could sell the HTT, or you could just keep holding it and just wait until a later time. There are probably some reasons that some people will decide to do what they want to do based on their situation, whatever jurisdiction they're in, etc. Right? So they don't have to run right away, get this done. They can wait for the best timing for them, and there is no rush to decide. All right. And so the market decides what all these prices are going to be, right? And that's something I've covered extensively in the different streams that I've done. This is V2, V3 liquidity. These are DEXs. People make decisions and do things, right? And when that happens, you may have mispricings, and I've seen some people take advantage of them. You can probably think of some things that have happened in the past with different tokens where that happens, right? So, if the price is below, if you're doing a comparison between the two, if the price is below 1 HEX, probably makes sense to just redeem it for 1 HEX. And if it's above 1 HEX, you'd have to evaluate carefully whether it made sense to swap for HEX from the HTT. Though I do think that's kind of like an edge case. Right? And let's talk about that a little bit. All right, so mispricing. Prices moving around all over the place, but at the time I had done this, the HTT was 0.97 HEX, right? And so there could be, with enough, now again, with enough interest and if it makes sense, so I'm not talking about the gas cost and the effects, but if it's mispriced and it's cheaper than 1 HEX, well, somebody may buy it and redeem it 1-to-1. I mean, I'll tell you what, I watch those HTT 3000s, and I know there's some other people watching them. If for some reason the HTT 3000s are 0.6 of a HEX, well, I'm going to buy some. Why the hell wouldn't I do that if I'm going to get, an instant return the next day, right? If the market's in balance and it's so close, it makes no difference. It makes no difference, right? I can retire it. I'm not going to do a trade. I do a retirement. There's probably some preferential tax treatments. Talk to your own advisors about that. There's a difference between swapping and exchanging, etc. Right? But you have that. And then when you look on the other end of it, if for some reason it was 3% higher, 1.03 HEX, right? Well, I would expect people are going to sell it, right? And then get the value there, and then see the prices come down to 1. If I was to guess about this, we might see being 1-to-1 exactly with HEX is kind of hard, but I bet you we see both conditions occur with different HTTs, where some are underpriced and some are overpriced, right? It just makes sense that could happen. It does make sense to me that could happen. But people aren't going to be doing a bunch of swapping unless it's significant, right? If the price impact is 3% and you're going to end up with less HEX, why would you even do it? Right. And you can, to do that, you can really eyeball it. You take your HTTs and you go to your favorite aggregator and go simulate a swap. And if you're going to get less HEX than the HTTs you're putting in, then don't do it. It would make sense to me not to do it. Right. But in the edge case, again, if something was really, really expensive, you would expect that people will mint more and sell it and bring it back down to 1. So you have that going on. All right, let's do the next one here. All right, talking about rolling forward. So if we're talking about these HTTs, right, and the idea that they're all going to be HEX, and this is what's fascinating to me, particularly with the ones that are really close to one-to-one already. You know, at step one, you're holding the 2460s. You redeem them one way or another for one HEX. You have the HEX. Well, I'm not saying you have to do 2490. This is an example. If you wanted to run them to the next level, you would stake and mint 2490s. Right. Some people have even been talking about strategies where they can do HSIs that are longer out that they can reuse without having to do new stakes. But in this case, you know, if we're ending our stake and we have our 2460s and now we have a big pile of HEX, well, now you can go mint 2490s, provide liquidity, earn fees. You know, when 2490 redeems, same process, you redeem, get the most HEX that you can, and then move on to the next leg, 2520. I mean, some people have different strategies. Some are thinking they're going to roll from 2460 to 2490. Others are thinking they're going to do 2460 and then go out to 2520. You know, others are thinking they're going to, you know, they'll go 6 months apart. But this is all your choice, as the user gets to choose. Nobody's forcing you to do it. But what it's creating is this lower yield curve on the front end, where we have liquidity that's getting banked up and might even begin to resemble a bow wave. We'll have to see what people actually do. Maybe it ends up being equalized. I don't know. But the idea, again, is that the liquidity is continuously moving forward into the bond market, and it's all being provided as a service. It's being provided as a service. All right. And so it's all about growing that infrastructure and kind of getting it done now before we see, I think I saw Randy post in the chat, rumors about August being a good month. All right, let's look at our next one here. All right, so we talk about rolling forward, and then let's wrap this up, this final slide, right? You know, every redemption proves that the system works. We've been seeing that. We saw that with the 2430s. That was observable. I mean, there were others in the past that were done for testing, but it was hard to watch them because we weren't all here looking. But I think the reason I wanted to talk about the 2460s is I think it has this, I think getting our heads around the idea that this is a real HTT that's out there today. It's almost one-to-one, and thinking about, okay, what happens if I have that HTT? What happens? Well, you can, if you had a stake, you could have retired it already and you don't owe that. You just get the balance of your stake. Anyways, right? If you had it in your wallet because you swapped for it, you redeem it for one-to-one HEX. And so redemption isn't the end, it's the beginning of how the market moves to the next level. All right. So again, real high level with all this stuff, right? We have HTT holders out there that they can redeem. We have arbitrage traders. Yeah, there's going to be some people that are going to make a living off of this, I believe, right? You have people who set up the stakes, right? They're going to make their choice. And almost every choice here is about how to make sure you have more HEX, right? So people are going to be making decisions based on that if they care about it, right? They're going to be looking for that. Community has that ability to protect redemption by going in and ending stakes, even if, you know, if I don't come back and I'm the guy with, you know, 200 million HTTs, somebody else can send it, right? Because it's delegated to the contract, and so the contract can end it. And so that means anybody who pushes the button can end it. Doesn't mean it can't hurt anybody. You don't get their HEX, nothing like that. The person just gets their HEX back, you know, the HEX that they are owed back. And that, you know, that for those who don't know, if I had 1 million HTTs that I minted, and you know, I paid back 900,000 of them, and I still owe 100,000, I still get all the HEX, right? I just get 100,000 less because I have 100,000 outstanding HTTs that are out there. And then as we're going forward, you know, the liquidity providers are providing that liquidity as a service in order to earn fees, and then the actuator holders are doing their deal to you know, by putting them in the vaults to earn part of those fees. Right. So let's see if any of this makes sense to you guys in chat, and you can tell me what you're thinking. Let me see what I got. See if we got that. So let's take a look. You guys probably don't want to see this thing. Boom. All right, take that down. All right, so that's our little slideshow. Randy's saying hex bond vigilante. I see C3 works out, co-founder of this protocol. I am not a founder of the protocol. Tim, thank you for coming. I'm just a community member. I like what's going on. We got the Iron Horse out here from New Zealand. At least it's morning for you. At least it's morning this time. We got the Johnny Chaos out here. We saw Hex King 720. Good to see you. NJ Dub. Let's see here. Legendary Squad. Randy Halarski. Yeah. We're talking about Hex having a beautiful August. Rumors this one. They are. Yeah, I think one of the rumors too that I've heard kicked around a lot has been this 10-cent number. That's why I was thinking in on the 40x to 10 cents. And of course, all the HTTs go up with Hex because they're priced in Hex. They only change when people make actions. Sean, I think there's a token called Up Only. Let's see. All right, Johnny's saying traders, liquidity, locust, rollers, something for everyone. Yeah, I think that's the key point here, Johnny, that I keep coming back to too in my head. I can pretend that nobody does anything but staking natively and for long periods of time. But I know that's blatantly false. I know it's blatantly false. Why do I know that's false? I know that's false because I'm watching what's happening with the staking, and I see a cadre of people using Actuator. I see a cadre of people going all the way out really long, and I see a cadre of short stakers, and I see a little bit of smattering of people doing stuff. There aren't a lot of people who are staking Hex, individually. We've seen a downtrend on that. There are a shat ton of people who like to do things like trade, provide liquidity, roll. I mean, there's all sorts of different things that could be happening right out there. And I'm just acknowledging the fact that it's there. And I think this is a great expansion tool for those people to do what they want to do. And it's all based on Hex. And I like that part. C3 Works is saying, I love seeing the whole market driven yield curve taking shape. Yeah, I've been seeing that too. AI agrees with you. It's been created pretty good. It's, the way it seems to be self-regulating is pretty crazy. All right, and I'll show everybody what I mean by that. Keeps it crypto. Good to see you. Let's see if we can show this little guy. Let's show this one. All right, let's go look and see. So if we go over to the deck screener, let's see what Hex is doing right now. So yeah, even while we're doing this, Hex has had a little bit of pump up here. I mean, we're at 11%, 12% on the day, according to deck screener. Looking at the price that's out here, I was looking at one of the other HTT, or the HTT was out there, and I was like, are we looking at a cup and handle? But this looks like a V recovery type of a thing, and I think that yeah, if this makes it up above Johnny's 0.003 level, you're probably looking at 4 to 4.5 is my guess, and we'll see. But it's been looking really good and really strong, And for those who didn't know, back down here in June, we were down here at the bottom. You get 1.3 million Hex per $1,000, and now you're a little bit less than 400,000. So it's almost 3x at this point, maybe a little bit over 3x now. And so the more this happens, the harder it's going to get Hex. And what's crazy about that is you go look at the swapping and whatnot that's going on out there. You got to go through 8 different pools, to get anything. So if you go to Deck Screener, you can follow the HTTs that are out there. Let's see if this guy will load up. And I've got a bunch of them loaded up here. And when I'm talking about the prices, and we'll put them in Hex terms, it's very interesting to watch. And this is why, C3 Works, use your words to explain to people why. But, in my mind, the way I'm thinking about it is the more this looks like a market that can be understood and forecast and used, and the larger it gets, the more opportunity there is for very big dollars to come in and utilize this system. That's what I'm thinking. And so when you look at this, it looks irrational, not irrationally, but it looks like it's rationally priced. Going 99 on the 2460 Next one down, 0.995. Next one down, 0.98. Next one down, 0.9824. Okay, a little pop up, 0.974, but then we're back down to 973, 975, 96, 94, 94, 95. And so as these start to develop and this liquidity thickens, we should see some normalization, right? And of course, if the HEX price goes up, all these numbers go up. I mean, the 2460, roughly 6K in liquidity directly. Well, again, at what's 40x times 6,000, right? That's $24,240,000, which might be sitting on the lower rung. Is that enough liquidity to do what you want to do? Most of our wallet activities, the way we think as humans, doesn't go up 40x. People who are swapping around $1,000, they might swap 2 or 5,000. People don't immediately go, I'm going to go swap 40,000. And so the price going up can outpace the market and create opportunity for people with lower volume marks, their comfortable range to really execute on these types of systems. But again, just looking through, and it's a little small for you guys, you have to look at it yourself, I guess. I try and make it a little bit bigger. But you can see these HTT prices, just boom, boom, 90, 88, 85, 78, 71, very normalized, 65, 63. 58, 49, 51. Okay, you got a sticker here. So HTT 5555 is probably a little low, right? Then you drop the 35, the 6666s, but then it pops back up to 441. Those represent opportunities for people who are interested in using this. How would they, what would a curve trader do? Well, they might take something that's very expensive. Johnny showed some of this in his vids. But you might take something that's almost 1-to-1 HEX and go drop it in something and get 3 times the units, that type of thing. And then when the situation reverses, go back. But it's been coming together really nicely that way that looks. Again, the filtering in here is great. You can actually come in and filter. I'm not going to bore everybody with pushing buttons to show that. And then if you go to let me go to look and see what we got for mints and whatnot. I've seen a little bit of an explosion in the amount of actuator being put out into the vaults, up over 300 million. Just reading the database. So we're up at 320 million now. And that's people participating in by putting actuator in the vaults to earn mints. So this 57 million that went to the 8,000 is a little bit of front running of the idea that people are going to mint. Next highest one, or the highest one, is the HTT 7,108 million. And then you see people participating at different time frames where they drop the actuator into these different HTTs. Anytime anybody mints one of these, a portion gets sent out as a reward to the vault holders. And then when you look down at the front end, you can see a whole varying number of amounts. So I don't know why this happened, but somebody put 5 million on 2490, which is about a 50-day stake from now. Perhaps they plan on doing a lot of minting, right? So that pretty much ensures they're going to get all of them, all of the reward, because that's a pretty high number, the 5 million. With the rest of them, you got 300,000, 382,000, 2,700, 427,000 actuators. So these are getting filled in, and people are adding into these different vaults, and basically taking the bet that somebody's going to do something right with minting. And then on the right hand here, you can see the screen. You can see that we have some minting that's gone on in the last 24 hours, where the 8,000 is almost 512,000, 511,000 have been minted in the last 24 hours. 7,000 is almost 200,000, 6,000 is 439,000, 4,000 is 82,000, etc. And so all of that results in fees that go into the vaults, right? And the people in the vaults get to share that. All right, let's see. I think I'm about done. Let me check to see if you guys got questions. I always feel like I don't hit this right. I'm trying though, so I got to answer this. Answer this as we go. All right, let's see. Hey, Seven, good to see you. Good to see you. HEX is booming, John. Yeah, it does. Reminds me of 21 for sure. Let's see what we got here. Keeps it crypto. What happens when demand significantly reduces time discounts across the yield curve? Boom. Yeah, yeah. So, if you listen to me at all, you know that I'm like always conservative. But, what happens when HEX isn't available, but it's available in HTTs? And not only that, so you have a double effect. You have people who can get HEX. They do it on the market. Since the HTTs are connected to HEX through liquidity, they're going to go up because they're priced in HEX, right? So you have that aspect of it. But then what if somebody else says, oh, I like the idea of having 2 times as many in the future. I'm okay. I'm going to wait. I'll wait to get 2 times, and they swap into these. Yeah, that's the opportunity, right? All right. Yep. See you later there, Mr. Halarski. All right. C3 works. Crispy totally gets this protocol. He's a huge community asset with all his educating. Thank you. You're welcome, buddy. I don't know if I know everything, but I'm trying, because I didn't I feel like I got what's the right word? Not sidelined, but I was surprised by this whole front end development. Just like a lot of people just hear me talking about Actuator and they get that funny look on their face and they cock their eye. Like, what are you talking about Actuator for? In the Actuator protocol, we got HEX, right? This is like another level detailed. I was like, I want more T-shares. I like this because it gets me more T-shares. I can amplify and get more T-shares. I like that, right? So that was where I was sitting. It was really hard for me to, and I'm still working on it, because I'm not a trader and I'm not a bond trader for sure. I'm waiting for the real bond traders come in here and start telling us some stuff. But I'm getting my head around it. Like, it was a stretch for those of you listening for me to understand in my head that minting a short-term HTT doesn't mean that I lose any HEX. That was really hard for me to understand. Like, I'm not going to lose any HEX by doing that. I might lose time. I might lose gas. I might lose opportunity. I'm not losing HEX. Not directly that way. Like, I was very worried about the risk. And now when I look at it, and I did a couple of these streams where we talk about liquidity as a service. Well, all of that liquidity, if somebody sets a liquidity pool up and they have it set and they take it down after redemption, all of it's HEX. They don't have to keep it up. They can pull it down and turn it all into HEX. And so, yeah, and somebody might not use that, but it's pretty cool. BFAM, good to see you. LFG Actuator protocol is growing nicely. Can you imagine another 500 people joining? Yeah. You say shh. I say shh. But here I am talking about it. So yeah, other people will join eventually. And so I think that's going to be huge once we start seeing more people roll in. My guesstimate is we got about, I don't have any real scientific way to do this, but like 300, 350 people participating in this. All right, big dollars. Can totally understand and use this yield curve. They do it for the U.S. Treasury curve. Yeah, C3 works. I agree with you. That's been my research for this. Free speech is asking about, could a bot create arbitrage opportunities in this market? Absolutely, 100%. I thought about that a lot myself too, both in a concerned way and a positive way. Concerned because I try to think, is there some way that the market could be screwed up? This is all PulseX LP. So it's kind of, anything can happen to PulseX can happen to it. However, currently, and I wouldn't call it a bot, but that LPX, the LPX system, people loaded a ton of things in there that are actuator related, HTT related, and thousands of transactions. That's the closest thing to a dedicated bot. But I also know, that one protocol is out there. It's a degen protocol on Pulse Chain, and they have a whole DAO dedicated in part to going and doing some of that ARB type activity, right? So they're doing a DAO where people go in and that system is doing actuator vaulting and LP minting and actuator farming with the LP, all that kind of stuff. So that's going. All right, let's see. Keeps it crypto, saying I could see people using this as a self-directed life insurance retirement funds. They can pull from it, and many other stuff that people can use CFI funds for. But they can use this trustless and solo. Yeah, one of the members of the Actuator Telegram over there, Boxy, he started talking about the HELOC, right? And the HEX, the HEX line, a line of credit, right? So instead of equity line of credit, a HEX line of credit, right? So you can actually be using your HEX and use this as a form of that. Well, I don't think anybody defined this as a loan, but it's similar in that I can put my HEX in and get some value out, go do something with it, come pay the HTTs back when I'm ready. And some people guess that they can get the HTTs cheaper in the future and they're going to pay them back. Because some of these terms are really long. We're talking 10 years, right? So, 10, 12 years, 15 years. I mean, some of these HTT maturities are way out there. So there's many years yet to go. So, instead of it being like a home equity line of credit, it ends up being a HEX line of credit. Pretty cool kind of a thought. Yeah. Well, I think so you're saying that I always thought this was possible, the idea of utilizing HEX as an instrument like this. But HTTs really truly allow this for the future. Yeah. I mean, other things may come along, and we don't know what will happen with the Hedron ICOSA ecosystem. It may revive itself, but I'm definitely liking the idea that actuators are immutable, utilizes HSIs, which are immutable, which utilizes the HEX stakes, which are immutable, and I can utilize the system however I want to. And I can, that was an aha moment to be able to be like, you mean if there was we're going to make up a number. You mean if there was $1 million worth of liquidity on the front end, and I could come in and just take $10,000 worth of HEX and swap out and go do something with it and come back. And if I don't like a 30-day term, I can go out 90 days. And if I don't like that, I can go out 180 days. So I have enough time to do whatever degenerate crap I'm going to do. Right. And so it starts really opening up your mind to the idea that this is value that you now have access to. Now, somebody provided that in the form of liquidity, right? So it isn't free per se, provided in terms of liquidity. And that's what C3 works to say. There's many sophisticated strategies that can be done once the ecosystem has true and pure measure for its native time value of money. And this is, and he's saying this is establishing it for HEX. Yeah. And that's what we were talking about, how the price curve is starting to kind of like smooth out and be normalized. There'll probably always be mispricings, and things will never be like perfect. But it's pretty amazing to watch it and see how it'll develop. And the longer we're able to do that, do this, and it keeps going, the more opportunity there'll be for bigger money to come in, because everybody likes green, baby, right? Everybody likes green. Everybody likes the dollars. They're going to come in when they think they can make money. Axis, I see you out there. Keeps in crypto, a 5 or 10x in the depth of these pools will really kickstart this engine. Yeah. I think so too. Now, I did a infrastructure stream a couple of weeks ago. And some people will say, well, now I'm not going to do it because it's too late. But it's not too late to get started with any of this stuff. What's really intriguing about the HTT HEX is, pools, is the very minimal, if any, impermanent loss risk. There's almost none, right? I mean, I guess maybe somebody can come up with some sort of weird edge case. But both sides of the pair are HEX. It's just that one is HEX now, the other is HEX in the future. And when you get to redemption, they're both HEX. And so if they trade against each other for the next 10 years and they earn fees, even if they're very modest and tiny fees, it's all more HEX, right? So from a provider perspective, it's pretty killer, right, to be able to do that. And then from a user perspective, of course, the bigger those get in depth and in value, the bigger the deal it is for what people can move in and out of those positions very quickly. So it's pretty cool that way. And so I do encourage people, for somebody who's new to the actuator protocol, yeah, obviously do your own research, but I would probably look first at the majors. And when I say the majors, the incentivized pools. And so you can not only earn LP fees, but also farm. And the farms will be up for another year until October of 2027. But you can actually go farm, and those are paying 20% ish, sometimes a little higher, sometimes a little bit lower in terms of rewards, and you get your feet wet. And then if you get a little bit further into it, you could actually start looking at doing things on the curve at different intervals. So that's it. All right. Tim saying, this is what I'm thinking as well. Just get my head wrapped around the concept. Thanks. Yeah. I probably said 6 different things that fit that, but I'm with you there on that too. Just trying to get my head around the different concepts, because there are different strategies. There's the get more T-shares strategy. There's the get more HEX strategy. There's the earn more HEX. And this is in the bond market, I think in particular, you can see it. If you go to TradFi bond market and go look that up online, you can ask AI about different strategies that are out there. There are people who are interested in total return. That's what they're interested in. There are people looking, because they got to publish it to somebody, TradFi, right? And that makes a big deal for their business. And then there's people who are chasing just simply APR, because they're looking for income, not final results, right? They might be looking for income. So there's different strategies that people will be putting together here for those. And Pocalypsis talk about T-shares for the win. I know it's worth. Yeah, me too, man. And I think that what I would look for in the actuator, of course, the 6,000s look pretty primed to be able to still do amplification. I'll be watching the 8,000s pretty hard, because if they go up in price, particularly as the farms come online, if people want those and they have to buy them off the market instead of minting them, or for some other crazy reason, people just buy them, because some people don't want to stake at all. They'll just buy them off the market, right? And so they go. And so with that being the case, I've shown mathematically how you can amplify 2 or 3 different times, meaning you make a stake, you mint, you swap the HEX, you make a stake, you mint, you swap the HEX, and you actually end up with more HEX at the end than if you just did one stake, and you lock up a ton. I mean, the examples that I had done, we ended up with twice as many T-shares and twice as much HEX being staked. And then Johnny Cass did some too. He's done several videos now too, showing the same thing. And I know in the back room, a lot of people aren't doing, necessarily out streaming and whatnot, but in the background, we've got other people that are actually doing it, and they're just not talking about it out in front of the public. That's all. All right. Political free speech is saying, on my growing list of things to build, I hope the cyberpunks will be proud. I think they'd be proud of this. I think they'd be proud. And yes, one of the things I've tried to do is keep, you're talking about HEX goes up, Actuator, Hedron, Maxi, it all benefits. They do. They're all tied in some way to it. In fact, I try to include discussions of Maxi and DESI as part of this conversation. We're talking about the HTTs that are out there, because I do see them as similar. Yeah, not the same, similar. I mean, I do expect, and I can look at my estimates for both DESI and Maxi to see what I'm going to get, what I think the estimated return is going to be on that, and do comparisons. And so they're out there and available to us as well. And then Keeps It Crypto saying, people don't understand there's nothing like the HEX ecosystem anywhere else on chain, anywhere in CeFi. Other chains make memes, and we're building, and Pulse Chain is building the future of finance. Agreed. And I think that, I don't think that I've been able to find any other bond market in DeFi. And I think this is one of the most unique things in DeFi, what we're looking at right here. All right, with that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and close out. You guys send questions. There's all sorts of links in the show notes here to get over the actuator system. I got a ton of videos underneath the Actuator Pro, playlist on YouTube. You can dig in, take a look at that stuff. And otherwise, we'll see you next time. You guys stay crispy.
Yo, T, urgent HEX buy signal. Charts flaming hot.
Golden ratio, huh? That's how legends stack T-shares.
Get them while they're crispy, folks. This window won't stay open long.
Stake smart. Win big. Time rewards those who act.
Stay crispy, Hexicans.
You gotta move it, move it! Feel the rhythm of the blockchain.